Well, I've got 5:01 and I know we're always tight for time. I'm hoping this new format in Teams hasn't thrown everybody off, but I'd like to go ahead and get started, and hopefully a few more people will join us. My name is Dr. Michelle Immels, and I am the director for Live Well for our caregivers at Intermountain. And I would like to introduce Jillesa Anderson. She works as an exercise physiologist at the Utah Valley Live Well Center. She graduated from Brigham Young University with a bachelor's degree in exercise and wellness and a master's degree in exercise science. Jillesa specializes in sports performance testing, creating customized exercise prescriptions for all fitness levels, and health coaching. She's a certified balance and mobility instructor and is skilled in teaching specialized exercise programs for high-risk populations. She has a passion for working with patients and seeing their individual growth towards healthy lifestyle changes. In her free time, she enjoys being outside, playing volleyball, and spending time with her husband and 2 girls. And so we're going to get started here, and I will let Jillesa share her PowerPoint with us today. And I just wanted to let everybody know that we are recording this. So if you do have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat, and I will be moderating, and I can ask those as we are going along today. So with that, we will let Jillesa get started on talking about at-home workouts with us.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everybody. I'm excited to be with you guys tonight. And like she said, I'm an exercise physiologist at the Utah Valley Hospital at the Live Well Center there. And one of my favorite things about my job is the time I get to spend creating exercise programs, and there's a lot of variety that goes into that. There's different limitations for everybody, and different people prefer different things. And so it's really fun to find something that works for an individual as they're exploring their fitness field on their wellness journey. So I really like that about my job. So I was excited to present on this topic tonight, at-home workouts. So the concept behind our topic tonight is working out at home. And, you know, there's various reasons why some people will be working out at home. Maybe you prefer working out at home. Maybe with the challenges we faced over this past year, access to a gym is not an option, or is a little bit different than what it used to be. It looks a little different. So, you know, if you find yourself working out at home, whether you're wanting to save money and not spend money on membership fees, or, you know, traveling to and from the gym takes time as well. So, you know, you could walk right into your exercise room and that takes 2 seconds. So it cuts down on travel time as well. And some people prefer being at home, and, you know, who cares what you look like when you're at home and you roll out of bed and step into the other room. So there's lots of reasons people might prefer working out at home. And, you know, I want to talk tonight about how it's possible to maintain and improve a personal fitness program without stepping foot into a gym and staying at home. So let's go ahead and dive right into things. One question that I get sometimes from people or clients would be, you know, what kind of equipment should I get if I'm going to be working out at home? And that's 100% up to you. So you can spend as little or as much as you want on exercise equipment. But a couple things to consider before you do make any purchases is, you know, think about how much this piece of equipment is going to cost. Where are you going to store this in your home? Do you want an exercise bike sitting in your living room, or do you have a place for it? Some things like that to consider. And then how often are you going to use this? Is this something you're going to use every day, or maybe pull out once a year? So all these different things can really affect your decision on purchasing exercise equipment. And, you know, body weight exercises or doing equipment-free programs, those are free. So you don't have to buy any equipment if you don't want to, and that's totally fine. And we have lots of clients who prefer that, and you can still get a great workout in by doing body weight exercises or different exercises using minimal or no equipment at all. One thing that's worked for me and my husband is over the years, at the beginning of the year, we just kind of decide we're going to add one piece of equipment every year to our little home gym, and that's worked well for us. So over the year, I won't say collected because we use them frequently, but we've created a little home gym for us, and we just put the money we would put towards a gym membership program and put that towards some exercise equipment that we can use at our house, and that's worked out really well for us. But it's a decision that's completely up to you. And I will put in a little plug for resistance band, just because this is, if people are asking me what they should get, I would highly recommend starting with this. Resistance bands can accommodate many different fitness levels, and not only that, but they're easy to store, they're relatively easy to use, and they're low cost. And another thing I love is you can take them with you anywhere. So if you find yourself traveling a lot, or you're on the road, or you're going on vacation, but you still want to keep your normal fitness routine, resistance bands are a great option. So they take up little space, they don't weigh very much, so great option there. I thought I'd put my little plug in for that. So next question, after you choose your exercise equipment that you want and you have that at home, let's quickly dive into the exercise recommendations. So how much should you be exercising? And the American Heart Association has suggested that for aerobic exercise, you get 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity, or 75 minutes of vigorous, or you can do a combination of both. And that recommendation is for weight maintenance. And if you are focusing on weight loss, the recommendation is twice that. So for weight loss, it would be 300 minutes of moderate intensity and 150 minutes of vigorous each week. For strength training, they recommend performing muscle strengthening activities, whether using resistance or weights, on at least 2 days per week. And, not a recommendation, but something else to think about is just spending less time sitting. And I know that with the transition that probably a lot of us have made over the past year, we've probably spent maybe more time sitting from working at home, and even light intensity activity can offset some of the risks of being sedentary. So even setting a timer on your phone and just moving more throughout the day, getting up each hour to remind you to maybe get up and walk around, or taking a brisk walk. Benefits of exercise can be seen in as little bouts of 10 minutes or more. So even just getting up and taking a quick walk at lunchtime, can have wonderful effects and benefits upon your health. So consider that as well when you look at these guidelines. But if you look at these numbers and you're feeling a little overwhelmed, some of us might be doing this, some of us might, be at square one and it looks a little different for us, but I would just suggest start where you're at, meet yourself where you're at, take where you're at and set some reaching yet achievable goals. And then when you gradually, as you make that a habit and fit that into your routine, you can gradually increase the intensity and duration of your exercise as your schedule and your fitness ability allows. So don't get discouraged, start where you're at, and these are recommendations what you can work up to. So next question, what types of exercises to do? So when we exercise, we want our body, an adaptation occurs when we put a stimulus on our body. And in order for that adaptation to occur, the stimulus must be greater than what our body is normally used to doing. And we call that the principle of overload. So we want to make sure we're switching up our exercise routine frequently, and we're using that principle of overload and having our body do different things, so we're just not stuck in the same routine and doing the same thing. Because after a while, when you're doing your bicep curls and you're keeping your weight the same, it's not going to have the same effect on your body and your muscles as it did 3 months ago when you started your fitness program. So it's always important to keep that in mind and switch that up. And as you're doing that, my rule of thumb that I always tell people is to keep it simple, right? So with that, I have a little rule of thumb. It's a push and a pull and a core exercise. And I'll go over each of those topics in those categories. But as you focus on a push exercise, a pull exercise, and a core exercise, you usually end up hitting most of your major muscle groups. And it's a pretty well balanced routine. So first, we've got our push exercises. And a push exercise contracts the muscles when the weight is being pushed away from your body. Okay, so the force is exerted when the muscle contracts as you push. So some primary muscles used in a push exercise, the groups would be your chest muscles, triceps, those muscles in the back of your arms, your quadriceps, which are your muscles in the front of your upper thigh, calves, those are the muscles in the lower back of your leg, and your shoulders. And I want you guys to imagine, so here are some examples of push exercises. So imagine yourself doing a push-up, and as you're pushing your body up away from the ground, think about what muscles you're contracting or where you're feeling that exercise. And as you do a push-up, you're probably feeling that mostly in your chest, maybe in your triceps a little bit. And as we noted on the slide before, those are the major muscle groups there for those push exercises. So when you're wondering what qualifies as a push exercise, think of those muscle groups and think of the action of, exerting that force as you're pushing that away from your body. So things like a push-up, any sort of squat, and there are lots of variations of squats, chest press, tricep push down, or any tricep extension activity, shoulder press, as well as calf raises. Those are all some basic examples of push exercises. So after you've picked your push exercise, you'll go ahead and rotate to your pull exercise. And a pull exercise occurs when the muscles contract, when weight is being pulled towards your body. So primary muscles used in a pull exercise would be your back muscles, your biceps, and your hamstrings. And those muscles are the upper back of your legs. You've got your obliques and your trapezius, often referred to as your traps. So those would be the primary muscles used for pull exercise. And some examples of a pull exercise would be a pull-up, it's kind of a given, and a bent over row. And in the picture on the right there, you can see this woman, she's doing the exercise. This is called a reverse fly. So she's pulling that weight up, okay? That would be an example of a pull exercise as well. Any type of deadlift, okay? It's focusing on your lower body. Bicep curl, any sort of bicep curl. There's lots of variations for a curl as well. And hamstring curls, or any sort of variation there. As you rotate to your core exercises, this is an important part of your exercise routine that should not be overlooked or neglected. Most of our movement is generated from our core. So think of all the activities you do throughout the day: bending, turning, twisting, back extension. A lot of activities of our daily living require, having those core muscles and those core stabilizers and moving around. So a strong core can help you improve your overall fitness. It can help prevent injury, and it can help improve your posture as well. So it's a really part of your exercise program that is really important to focus on. And the muscles that make up your core, that very top muscle, your transverse abdominis. So this muscle is your deepest core muscle. And lots of times when people are reminding, you know, if you ever heard the term brace your core or make sure your core is tight or draw in, your transverse abdominis is going to be the muscle that they are referring to. And I like to coach people on this a little bit while I'm explaining that, because that can kind of be confusing when people say draw your core in or brace your core, because you might not know what that feels like. So one way that I like to teach that, and you can all do this with me right now while you're sitting here, you can take your thumbs and you can push them in into your tummy, kind of by your belly button. And as you push them deep into your tummy, you can kind of cough. And as you cough, you probably felt some muscles tighten. And that's your transverse abdominis. Those are the muscles we're talking about when we say, okay, make sure you have your core nice and tight as you're doing this exercise. And honestly, every single exercise you do could be a core exercise, because you should always have your core braced and tight as you're doing these exercises, because it can help prevent injury and different things while you're doing your exercise routine. So that's one way to kind of check and see if your core is braced. You know, are those muscles contracted as you coughed? Are those the same muscles that are contracted as you're bracing your core? Another way some people like to look at it is if somebody was about to, you know, maybe punch you in the stomach, what would you do? Your natural instinct would probably be to kind of, you know, brace your core. That's another way to look at it. So that's your transverse abdominis. Some other muscles that make up your core would be your rectus abdominis, and that's your outer front abdominal wall. And you have your obliques, which are your side abdomen muscles, pelvic floor muscles, hip flexors, and supporting back muscles. So there's quite a few muscle groups that help make up your core. And let's go ahead and take a look at a couple examples of what some core exercises would be. So this gentleman on the right pictured, he's doing what we call a dead bug. So he's lying on his back in a supine position, and he's working his front abdominal wall, and you know, he's got his legs up and he's switching his legs with that exercise. So he's going to feel that in his hip flexors as well. So that's a great core exercise. Any type of plank would be considered a core exercise as well. Crunches, bicycle crunch, mountain climbers, and leg raises, those would all be considered examples of a core exercise. So as you stick to that principle of a push exercise, a pull exercise, and a core exercise, like I said before, you're really hitting all the major muscle groups of your body. And as you create your routine, you can really create a pretty well-balanced routine as you cycle through each of those categories. And then as your schedule allows and as your fitness ability allows, you can just add more of those exercises in for each of your exercise sessions. So I thought I'd spend just a few minutes going over rest intervals, sets, and repetitions. So after you've decided on what exercises you want to do, let's talk a little bit about how you're going to do them. We want them to be most beneficial to you. So we'll go ahead and start with rest intervals. So when we talk about rest intervals, we're referring to that time between the different sets. So maybe you just did a set of 10 bicep curls and you're taking a break before you start your next set of 10. That's your rest interval, that time period between those sets. And your body has energy stores, and the amount of time you rest, depending on when you start your next set, your storage, your energy storage is so much replenished. And that's the kind of the idea behind a rest interval and why it's important because based on the different goals that you've set for yourself, you're going to want to do it within a certain time frame to help get the biggest muscle gains or progression or the most growth out of your workout. So if your goal is muscle hypertrophy and muscular endurance, which I will just say for most people, that's probably the goals that they've set for themselves. Most people probably are in these two categories right here, hypertrophy and endurance. After each set, you're probably going to want to rest 30 to 60 seconds. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. And in those 30 to 60 seconds, you're not fully replenishing your energy storage, but you're getting pretty close. But as you start that next set, you're working through finishing that set on maybe you're at about 70% of your normal, but you're pushing through and working, and that's where you're going to get that growth and that muscular endurance and that muscular hypertrophy. So if that's your goal, hypertrophy or endurance, 30 to 60 seconds. If your goal is working on power, so let's say you want to be able to jump higher, different things like that, you're going to be looking at 1 to 2 minutes rest between the different exercises or sets. And then if your goal is to have maximal strength, you're going to be waiting 2 to 5 minutes between each set. And so it does differ on what your personal fitness goal is, but I would say for the most part, 30 to 60 seconds is a pretty good rule of thumb. And as far as sets and repetitions go, I'll just suggest usually 3 sets of 10 to 15 repetitions fits quite nicely with people's personal fitness goals. Those number of sets and number of repetitions would change if your personal fitness goal is under the umbrella of power or strength. It looks a little different, but for the most part, 3 sets of 10 to 15 would be probably where you're wanting to work up to. And you might do 1 set of 8, and that might be where you're at, and that's okay. If doing 1 set of 8 is what you can do at that time or what you're able to do, that's great. Start where you're at and then just work from there. But typically kind of working towards that goal of 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps. It's where you'll want to be. And sometimes I get asked the question, so if we're supposed to constantly be overloading and having our body adapt to that different overload and making those gains or that progression, when do I know if I need to up my weight? And that's a great question. Sometimes we get really comfortable with what we do and what we know how to do. So bumping up weight can be challenging sometimes, or adding more resistance if we're using a band or different things like that. That can be challenging. But typically I just have my clients ask themselves on that last set that they're doing currently, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was that for you? And I say, if you're anywhere below an 8, then it might be time to bump your weight up because that might be getting too easy for you. And typically I want my clients to be at around a 9 or a 10 on those last couple repetitions on their last set. Should be pretty hard for them as they're struggling to get through. And then when you do decide to bump your weight up, let's say we're working on our bicep curl and we're doing 3 sets of 10, or no, let's say we're doing 3 sets of 15 with our 10-pound weight. And you get finished and you're feeling pretty good, feeling chipper. Well, you should be pretty tired when you're done with that. So you'll probably want to up your weight. So let's say you start doing 12 pounds for your bicep curl. When that happens, you're probably going to want to reduce the number of reps that you're doing. So let's say now you're going to try to do 3 sets of 10. And then you're going to work your way back up to that 3 sets of 15. And once you get there, then you'll know that it's probably, and you're feeling comfortable there, it's probably time to up the weight or the resistance for that exercise. So that's just a rule of thumb that you can kind of use if that's helpful for you to gauge when you should be increasing your resistance or your weight for different exercises. And then this last slide just a couple tips I would have, I guess, for at-home workout routines is, you know, if you miss a day or 2 or 5, don't give up. You know, life happens. Consistency is ideal, and it's fabulous for making, you know, a healthy lifestyle habit change. But if you find yourself in a rut and you've had different things going on, or you've been unmotivated or different things like that, meet yourself where you're at, understand life happens, get back up and keep going. That's what's important. Another thing, find activities that you enjoy. If you're looking to make this a lifestyle habit, working out at home, something that you're going to do consistently to improve your overall fitness, you know, you want to probably be doing things that you enjoy. If you don't like a certain exercise, I promise there's another way to exercise that muscle. So find not only activities that you enjoy, but exercises that you enjoy, because there's, like I said, that's one of the best parts about my job. There's just so much variety, and as you kind of play around with what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, maybe what you need to improve on, that can be fun in itself. But find something that you enjoy. And, you know, accountability. I think this is a big factor when you're trying to make those healthy lifestyle changes, and, you know, you're working out at home by yourself maybe, but I love the saying that says, if you want to go alone, or if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I think there's a lot of power to that. And accountability is such a big factor when you're, you know, trying to stay consistent with your exercise routine, and whether that's, you know, telling friends and family about your fitness goals or your fitness routine, or, you know, being accountable to them, or even being accountable to yourself if you are logging or tracking or different things like that. There's a lot of power in being accountable, and, you know, looking at what you've accomplished and talking about it with somebody or writing about it. And then I kind of mentioned this one, logging or tracking. There's also a lot of power when you log what you've started at or where you're at right now, and then in a couple months where you're at. It can be really motivating and rewarding when maybe you take a look at what you were doing 3 months ago. Maybe you were doing 1 set of 8 for each of your exercises, and now you're doing 3 sets of 10 to 15 or whatever. That's a big accomplishment, and you should celebrate that for yourself. And it's so powerful to look back and look at that. So I encourage you to keep a log of how much weight you're using. And not only is it very rewarding and powerful, but it helps you remember, okay, this is what I was using for my bicep curl or my overhead press, and you don't have to guess. And then tracking as well. You can use your Fitbit, your smartwatch, different things like that. It's always nice to track it and kind of see where you're at. One thing that has worked well for my husband and I, we just have a huge binder of different exercise programs that we've created, and, you know, over time they build up. And if you keep a log of all that, then when you go out, you can just flip one open. Whether you're doing your exercise program in the morning or in the afternoon, you just open the binder and there's a program written for you already that you did maybe 5 months ago or whatever. So that's something that we like to do. Just whenever we create a new exercise program, we just stick it in the binder and we can use it again and rotate it into our schedule. Also, you can also use apps. There's a wide variety of apps, and, you know, like downloading them to your phone, or, you know, asking around what some people's favorite apps are. They can help you go through your fitness program and give you some great ideas and great tips on how to do an exercise correctly, and keep you on track as far as, like, even with your timing goes. Sometimes they'll have like built-in timers and different things like that. So that's a great suggestion, you know, looking into some apps that you like. So, but with that being said, I will go ahead and leave the rest of the time open to you guys if you have any questions that I can do my best to answer. So.
Thanks so much, Jillesa. This has been a very informative presentation that you've given, and learned a lot and a lot of great tips. And I see a little bit in the chat, Dr. Joy is talking about apps. So that was a good segue into what you were just sharing with us, and different ways to get your workouts done. I just wanted to ask a question, and if anybody else has questions, feel free to type them in the chat and I can read them, or Jillesa might be able to see them now as well. But how would someone go about getting started? You shared a lot of information, and there's a lot of different possibilities. And if you haven't really done this before, what's a good way to get started, and maybe share a little bit about what you do at the Live Well centers, and how you can maybe get a little professional help too. I know you said you could go into some apps and get some direction that way, but why don't you share a little bit about the Live Well centers and what exercise physiologists do, and how we could get started?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of my suggestions would be, if you're just barely starting out, getting a baseline assessment. So where are you at physically? Can you do the exercises that you're wanting to do? Is it safe for you to do those exercises? And going and getting a fitness assessment, and that is something that we do at the Live Well centers. It can really help guide you and help you start out and know, what are my limitations? What's going to be good for me? Maybe I'm suffering with some lower back pain. What are some good exercises for me to do? Or maybe what are some exercises that I should probably stay away from until I'm, that back pain has been relieved a little bit. And getting a baseline assessment and talking with, an exercise physiologist or an exercise therapist at the Live Well centers can really be beneficial and help guide you, so you're getting the most out of your exercise routine and doing it safely. What a setback when you have an injury, because maybe you weren't doing an exercise or an activity correctly, and you've injured yourself, and that's quite a setback. So getting a baseline assessment would be my number one suggestion. And then if you feel like, at home is where you want to be, but you want a little more hands-on, we do virtual classes and we do virtual training that you can do at your home as well. And those are some great options if you're needing that accountability and maybe that little more hands-on with a trainer, to give you a little more confidence as you're doing your exercise programming at home. And then another suggestion is, be kind to yourself. If you're just starting out, even if you're following an app, or you have somebody you're following on social media, or you have a goal that you're working towards, start where you're at. And I know I've said that multiple times, but it's one thing to say it and one thing to actually do it, and be patient with yourself as you work through your fitness journey. Because like I said, if you jump into things and you're not doing things correctly, or you're doing too much, or different things like that, you could injure yourself. You could be more prone to injury, pain later on in the day, different things like that. And those can be some big setbacks as you're just starting out. So those would be my suggestions.
Thanks for that. I think those are all really great ideas. And also, if folks aren't seeing what's in the chat, there are a lot of great suggestions about getting equipment at Play It Again Sports, on Craigslist or KSL.com. And again, buying the one piece of equipment every year, or setting a little budget and goal to do that, and just kind of building over time is really a great idea as well. Are there any last minute tips? I know we're a little bit over time, so I appreciate everybody who's joined and stayed with us, but any closing comments or remarks you'd like to share with us before we end today, Jillesa?
Just one thing I didn't see those comments in the chat about finding exercise equipment, but just to add to what you have just said would be, me and my husband, there's a government surplus auction that happens sometimes, depending on where you live. It's wherever, but you can usually find some really nice exercise equipment at those government surplus auctions. Like, lots of times they're just like recreation centers that are getting new equipment. So we've gotten a couple of pieces of some nice exercise commercial grade equipment at those auctions that was well worth our time to go do that. So it's just something that we learned about a couple years ago. And if that's helpful to you, that's another place you could go get some discounted exercise equipment. So other than that, I think I've shared mostly what I'd want to share with you guys tonight. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And if you guys ever have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me anytime, or contact one of the Live Well centers. We'd love to help you with your wellness journey. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jillesa. Just so everyone knows, this is being recorded, as I mentioned at the beginning, and we will post it on our Healthy at Home website as well. So you can go back and reference it and see all the great tips and information that were in the PowerPoint and follow back up or share with friends. So thanks again, everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.